Welcome everyone, thank you for joining us for our webinar, Key and Handling, Procedures for Library and Archival Collections. I am Kareem D'Souza, Library Technical Assistant at the Preservation and Conservation Laboratory, Heritage Library Division, NALIS. We ask you to keep your cameras off and your mics muted. You are invited to type your questions into the chat for the question and answer segment at the end of this webinar. Before we get into care of our library and archival collections, let me introduce you to our institution. The National Library Information System Authority of Trinidad and Tobago, NALIS, is the country's coordinator for all library and information services. Beyond the Heritage Library, there are over 25 public libraries, 3 libraries in correctional institutions, libraries in secondary and primary schools, and in special libraries in several government agencies, all administered by NALIS. I encourage you to visit our website, www.nalis.gov.tt, for more information about our services. We will post the link in the chat of this webinar. One of NALIS's key responsibilities is to promote and preserve national heritage information. Though the National Library has a comprehensive collection of paper-based items and electronic audio visual media, there are particular emphasis on media materials with national and Caribbean origin, focus on authorship. The Heritage Library Division, located on the second floor of the National Library Building, Port of Spain, Trinidad, helps NALIS fulfills its goals in acquiring, promoting, and preserving national heritage information. Follow the Heritage Library Division on Facebook at NALIS HLDTT. See the link in the chat. Special collections acquiring and donating to Heritage Library Division consists of mainly traditional library items created or of the interest of significant person or organizations of Trinidad and Tobago. One would not be surprised to find within these collections books, newspapers, pamphlets, photographs, letters, film, and audio recordings. However, within several collections housed in the Rare Books Room of the Heritage Library Division, NALIS, there is an interesting mix of items often labeled memorabilia. The Preservation and Conservation Laboratory is responsible for ensuring the overall longevity of library and materials with specific attention to the Heritage Library Division and its collections of historical importance. The PSC Lab, which was officially commissioned in 2013, helps NALIS fulfill its roles as the International Federation of Library Association and Institution, Preservation and Conservation, IFLA, PSC, Regional Center for English-Speaking Caribbean. Additionally, this arm of Heritage Library Division advises public and private organizations on care of their collections and artifacts. The PAC Lab has been serving the preservation and conservation needs of clients through fumigating, freeze drying, conservation treatments, collection repairs, bindery services, disaster recovery, technical assistance, and preservation trainings. Take a narrative tour of the PAC Lab using the link in the chat. We miss carrying out our preservation clinics, tours, and training sessions in person. However, we are happy that technology allows us to continue this mission through this preservation webinar series. Let me introduce to you our facilitator today, Danielle Fraser. Since 2009, Danielle has been a library conservator and the head of the PAC Lab. Danielle holds a Master's of Science in Information Studies and a certificate in Advanced Studies in Conservation of Library and Archival Materials from the University of Texas at Austin. She was a 2008 Conservation Fellow at the Library of Congress, Washington, D.C. She has been a member of the American Institute for Conservation and the Library Association of Trinidad and Tobago. Danielle enjoyed presenting papers at annual meetings of regional associations, including ACRIL and CRIL. I know she's looking forward to presenting at our webinar today. Over to you, Danielle.
Thank you so very much, Kareem. And welcome everyone to our Care and Handling webinar. So glad that you're able to join us. How we handle and care for our library archival collections plays a major role in their long-term preservation. This involves handling, displaying, labeling, controlling environmental factors, and storing. We will look at storage more extensively in our next webinar focused on protective enclosures. We'll give the details for registration at the end. So let's take a look at the others as it relates to books, documents, and photographs found in our library and archival collections. First, let's agree to one truth. All things deteriorate all the time. Deterioration is inevitable. It goes on constantly. There will also be internal chemical reactions which cause deterioration to occur. However, some things deteriorate faster than others. The organic materials contained in library and archival collections are vulnerable to the environment in which they are kept. By changing surrounding conditions, we can either speed up or slow down the rate of deterioration of our collection items. The major environmental factors affecting our collections are temperature, relative humidity, light and ultraviolet light, and air quality. We looked at light and UV, dust, mold, and insects in some of our previous webinars. We'll post the links for the available recordings in the chat. A collection's lifespan can be significantly improved just by keeping cool temperatures. This is because the higher the temperature, the faster the rate of deterioration. In fact, every 10 degrees Celsius increase in temperature causes the rate of chemical reactions to double. So if we lower the temperature, we can slow the rate of deterioration. Experts disagree on what the ideal temperature for library and archival collections should be. However, it is frequently recommended that these materials are stored in a stable temperature no higher than 21 degrees Celsius or 70 degrees Fahrenheit. Though it may not be practical to keep this ideal, we should try our best to avoid extreme fluctuations. Relative humidity, or RH, refers to the amount of moisture in the air. High relative humidity, that is over 65%, combined with elevated temperatures, can accelerate chemical deterioration. On the other hand, very low relative humidity, that is below 30%, can cause desiccation and cracking and splitting of our collection materials. As you would for temperature, aim for a stable relative humidity for your collections. Choosing a location with steady temperature and RH will reduce risk from pest, mold, and chemical deterioration. At institutions, the temperature and relative humidity should be measured and monitored. The data helps document the functioning of climate control equipment and helps to give backing to requests for improvements or repairs. Monitoring also helps to determine the effect of the changes made. Here are some of the key tools we use to help monitor environmental conditions here at the PAC Lab. This is not a product endorsement. We use on the left the LSEC Environmental Monitor. It is a handheld device that is able to measure light, temperature, as well as relative humidity. And on the right, you see an environmental monitor, a preservation environmental monitor, or a PEM. It's a data logger that records temperature and relative humidity continuously, and the information is downloadable using a flash drive. Generally, our library and archival collections are more frequently used and handled than most museum collections. So, what about gloves when handling our collections? I want you to respond in the chat. Do you think gloves are necessary when handling our library and archival collections? Your response should be yes or no. You can use the chat and respond and say if you think gloves are necessary for handling our library and archival collections, yes or no. Thank you for your responses. So far, we're seeing that a majority of people believe that yes, gloves are necessary. Now, one thing, wearing gloves was generally seen as a good preventative measure for protecting collection materials from the natural oils in our hands. However, wearing gloves reduces our tactile sensitivity or manual dexterity, and we can cause damage when handling fragile items. So now it is understood that it's a whole lot better to handle collection items with freshly washed hands. Do not use lotions or hand sanitizers before handling collection materials. So, the convention right now has been do not use gloves because they can reduce your tactile sensitivity and your manual dexterity and cause damage when handling fragile items. However, there are some exceptions. For photographs and film, it is recommended that you use gloves because these materials are very susceptible to our skin oils. Also, be sure to use gloves as part of your PPE when dealing with hazardous substances like mold or dust. While the structure and materials varied over time, of books, varied over time, applying these few simple measures when we use them can help extend the life of our bound collections. First up, be careful not to spill food or drinks on your books. You should keep food and eating away from your collections. Use clean hands when handling books. And for removing a book from the shelf, do not do as what is seen in this image on the top, because it can cause damage when you pull a book out by its head or by its end cap. You want to either push the two neighboring books back in order to grab the spine in the middle, or stretch a finger along the top edge of the book and rock it forward in order to grab the spine. Do not use the end cap. Also, as you're reading a book, you may be in the habit of folding the corners in order to mark your reading spot. Do not do this. Instead, use a paper bookmark. And we say paper rather than leather or metals, which could stain or tear the paper. It's important that you do not force open a binding, as this would cause the spine to break. Provide soft support when viewing fragile books using cradles. This can range from foam shaped or plastic to a pillow to even as simple as a clean, dry cotton towel. Similarly, never place a book face down onto a flat surface. I know sometimes when we're reading and we take a pause, we tend to turn that book upside down onto a table or a chair in order to save that spot. Don't do this because this forces the book to open to a 180-degree angle, and that can cause damage. If a book must be photocopied, use a photocopier with an edge platform that allows for a gentler opening than one that has to be open at 180 degrees. Better yet, opt for overhead scanning or imaging for copying pages. As with books, keep food and drinks away from your documents. Ensure that your hands are clean when accessing documents and work on a clean, clear surface. Use folders to keep documents together rather than attaching fasteners like paper clips, staples, or rubber bands, all of which can cause damage. If folders are not feasible, use a non damaging fastener like plastic clips. Where possible, use surrogates or copies instead of the originals. There's several things to remember when handling photographs. Do not eat, drink, or smoke near your photographs, as with the rest of your collection. In order to reduce the handling of originals, try to use a copy or surrogate photo when possible. Work on a clear, clean, flat surface. In fact, you can cover the surface with a cheap plain paper like blank newsprint. Be sure to look at your photographs before handling. Be alert to conditions before you even touch them. It is recommended that you use gloves or very clean hands when handling photographs. Use both hands to hold the photograph along the edges. Avoid touching the image surface, and your hands can possibly leave fingerprints, which over time can obscure the image, as you see in this photo on the bottom. Do not use paper clips, staples, or rubber bands with your photos. And whenever you're carrying your photo, be sure to use support boards to lift and support them fully. You want to fully support the photograph so that it does not bend or hang over the edge as you handle them. Of course, we want to share our collections. We want to put them on display and exhibit them so that the members of our public, especially if we are a library or an archive, or even at home, we may want to have things on display so that others can enjoy them and see the collections that we have available. However, here are some considerations when displaying or exhibiting library and archival collections to ensure their long-term safety. Where possible, use copies or facsimiles. A high quality reproduction can be as good as the original for the purpose of portraying the information for a display. Do not place valuable originals on permanent display. These items should not be displayed longer than 3 months. Keep light levels low and reduce the amount of UV light, especially so. Use non-damaging exhibit cases, mounts, stands, frames, and materials for displaying your collections. One way of displaying your flat documents and photos would be to use matting and framing. While photographs, while, sorry, while matting and framing is recommended for your flat documents and photographs because these options provide support and protection. You want to be sure to use materials that are non-damaging to collection items displayed in the mat and frame. Talking about matting, this is a window mat. Window because the very front mat has a cutout, a window, through which you can see the document or photograph. The first mat on the left side shows the item being held down to the back mat using Japanese paper hinges. Japanese paper is a very neutral and archival quality paper that does not cause damage as it ages. The mat on the right side shows the use of paper or polyester corners. Do not use adhesives directly on the collection item itself. Double-sided tape, foam tape, or glues should not be stuck directly to the back of your documents or your photographs. And once you're framing the mat, one of the very important elements to consider in your frame would be the glazing, or what's considered the glass at the front of the frame. That glazing ought to be UV filtering glass or acrylic. And this company, TrueView, provides anti-reflective, anti-static, abrasion-resistant, UV protective glazing for your displays or exhibitions, etc. Sometimes when the humidity increases to the top of the items, especially for photos, can get very soft and sticky and can end up being stuck to the glass. To prevent this, it's recommended that you use spacers. Here are the components of a frame. At the front is the wooden or metal edge and the glazing and glass. Then the window mat, which will help bring some space between the item and the glass. And then you have the collection item itself, which is attached to an acid-free board at the back. Then you can have the backboard of your frame. Note that the materials directly in contact with the collection should be archival quality. We choose to label items for security, to indicate their ownership, or just for reference purposes. This should be done with an indelible, permanent, pH-neutral ink. However, pens, stamps, markers, stickers can all be damaging in the long term. Be consistent so that labels can be easily located. This will reduce the handling of the item. Conventionally, label the bottom right corner or the inside of a book on the flyleaf. If book plates are used, they should be made of acid-free, lignin-free, buffered paper and attached with a stable, reversible adhesive such as starch paste or metal cellulose. The use of a soft HB pencil to label originals is going to be important. Pencil is durable and it's water resistant. It does not run or cause issues like other inks possibly can. However, remember when you're writing the label with your pencil, do not press hard as to um, damage the photograph or document. One thing about documents or photographs you should recall, do not stick labels directly to them. The adhesive can cause damage to the paper as it ages. Use only HB pencils lightly on the back in the margin area. Inks or adhesives can become acidic or they can bleed into the item. This image below here shows how the paper and adhesive of this label have become very acidic. Note the brown color and how some of that color has been embedded into the photograph itself. Now, as it relates to books, yes, typically at our libraries and archives, we would label the spine, but as an alternative, especially if the spine has some decorative measures on it, you can choose to put a thin archival paper label inserted into the book so that it sticks out at the top. These will be visible while browsing the shelf, and it reduces the need for the items to be frequently removed from the shelf. choose to label the enclosures with stickers or permanent inks. Place the label in a location visible while the item is in storage. So for instance, we see here this album. The label is on the spine and on the front of the album, on the spine, so that as the album sits on the shelf, that label is very visible. Though we will take an in-depth look at protective enclosures, that is boxes, folders, sleeves, etc., in our next webinar later this month, there are a few other things to consider when storing your library and archival collections. Always, 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 and I emphasize it, always store your items off the floor and on proper storage furniture. It is really important that we ensure that our items are not placed on the floor. This can cause, you can have damage happen should you have a leak, or perhaps even it will be more easily accessible to insects and pests. Select storage furniture that is appropriate to the collection items. Consider that wood and coatings can off-gas harmful chemicals. So minimize this effect by sealing with polyurethane or lining with a barrier material like laminate, glass, plexiglass, or Marvel seal. Powder-coated steel or anodized aluminum are durable and non-reactive options for storage furniture. Shelves should be physically stable and able to support the items without extending beyond the edge. When shelving books, store them upright and organized by height so that they can help support each other. However, when considering large or heavy books, store them flat. Never store books with the spine up, as this can cause damage to the binding. You want to use broad bookends to support books. Those bookends should be smooth and without any hard edges or surfaces. The wire bookends that tend to come with some traditional library shelving are not recommended for books. Sometimes they are not large enough, and their wire structure can cause damage and indentation on the library materials. Keep books an inch or so from the edge. This ledge will help you monitor for dust and insect activity. Now, in my image here, uh, we see here some pamphlets that are bending over because they're not properly supported. One of the recommendations would be to use a magazine holder or a pamphlet holder that is able to support the pamphlets entirely on the shelf. Now, as an alternative, if you do not have magazine holders or pamphlet holders available, perhaps because of the cost, perhaps of just not being able to access them from where you are, one alternative for materials that are not able to support themselves on a shelf standing alone would be to use hard boards. You can actually cut boards out to the size of the pamphlets and then create a temporary cover on either side of the stack of pamphlets. This was one of the options that we utilized for some of our collections here in the Heritage Library prior to us getting magazine holders sufficient enough for the collection. So I thank you for attending our webinar. I want you to feel free to put your questions in the chat or to email us. My email address is up on the screen. We will also add to the chat a resource list of print and online resources for for the care and handling of library and archival materials. You will receive an email today with a brief survey. Your feedback is going to be important to us, and we look forward to your responses. And we encourage you to register for our next Family Heirloom Preservation Clinic, which will be on Wednesday, May 26th at 1 p.m. local time. You can learn tips and techniques for selecting the appropriate protective enclosures for your family heirlooms. The registration link is posted in the chat. And now we pause for your questions, if there are any. Thank you for your feedback. Hope that the information was very helpful as it relates to caring and handling your library and archival materials. Okay, just making sure that I'm getting all caught up with the messages.
So Daniel, we have one question coming in. They were wanting to find out, will all participants get a certificate after participating?
Unfortunately, no. We have not been issuing certificates of participation. We thank you for your participation, but no, as this is more of a webinar instead of a more extensive workshop, certificates of participation will not be issued. Thanks for understanding, Paul. Now, once again, the recording will be shared as soon as it's available. A fully transcribed recording will be available on NALIS's YouTube page. I encourage everyone, if you're on YouTube, to follow, subscribe to the NALIS YouTube page. Videos will be uploaded there. Of course, all participants who have been registered through the Eventbrite will be sent a direct email with the link to the YouTube video when it's up and available. Thank you so very much for your feedback. Kareem, I think that's it for questions.
Okay. I just want to wish everyone a happy Eid Mubarak to each and everyone, and please stay safe in this pandemic. Daniel, over to you.
Yes, thank you. I reflect the same thing. Happy Eid wishes to everyone celebrating tomorrow. And we also would want to be sure that you are remaining safe during this time. Please be sure to follow all the measures, all the health protocols that are necessary. Thank you so very much for joining us. Have a good afternoon.